this video, you'll get the most important tips to make the muscle up as easy as possible from the Streetlifting world champion and coach, Pere.
Alright, so for the first muscle up tip, I'm going to be discussing about the grip width, which it's a very important topic and many people doesn't pay much attention because you really just grip the bar at a certain width and you don't really care about it, but there's really an explanation of why we grip the way we grip the bar. Generally, what you want to do is to grip it at shoulder width, maybe a tiny bit wider. It should be more or less around here. You can see that, well, I'm a little bit wider than my shoulder width, and the explanation is because if you grip too wide, the transition is going to be harder and it's also harder to accelerate at the bottom part. As you can see, I'm going to do one muscle up with a very wide grip. And you really need to reach pretty high to actually complete the transition. And if instead you do it with a shoulder grip width, you don't need to reach that high to complete the transition. Also, it's easier to save a transition if your grip is more closer to shoulder grip width, because it's way better to fight here than having to fight with this stance. So my recommendation is for you to try to, bring your hands a little bit closer, up to shoulder width, more or less. And then if you were to grip too close, it would be awkward for the transition. So it's around shoulder width. And this brings us to the second tip, which is also about the grip. And what you want to do is to have an overhand grip, a pretty strong grip, because in the muscle up, as you have the transition, you need to rotate your hands around the bar while you're doing the transition, or maybe after the transition, or at some time. And if your grip is higher, it's easier to do this rotation than if your grip is completely loose. So I'm going to show you the types of grip that exist and which one for me it's the most optimal one. We have the normal grip, the loose grip I would say, which is this grip, which basically it's just hanging from the bar without any kind of modification. And then we have the false grip, which is where the wrist is touching the bar, which is not allowed in competitions. So, which would be that grip, which is perfect if you want to do a slow motion muscle up because your wrist is already above the bar, so you don't need to make the wrist change in the transition, but it's not allowed in competitions. And then we have the overhand grip, which is the one we will be using, which is like the normal grip, but we want to bring our wrists higher without touching the bar, but higher. So this way, when we are up in the transition, our wrists are in a higher position and it's better to rotate and finish the muscle up. I can maybe show you the difference between doing a muscle up with a very loose grip and a proper overhand grip, and maybe you can see that the transition is easier with the overhand grip than with the loose grip. So this would be the loose grip transition. I've never done this, so let's see. So there needs to be more rotation of the hands for this grip. And now for the overhand grip, which would look like this, there has to be way less rotation of the grip, so it's more optimal. To be able to achieve this overhand grip, it's good that you put chalk, and if the bar is very slippery, you can also apply some chalk to the bar or put some grip tape, which I'm going to show you now. So as we talked about in the first tip, the grip should be more or less shoulder width, so we need to take this into account before putting the chalk to the bar. And then what I would do is I would put some chalk in the most place we're going to place the hands, and you're basically going to extend it along the bar like this, and in the other one like that. And this really helps with having better grip and the bar becomes way more grippy. Another option is to put some tape, which I think it's more grippy than putting chalk, and you only need to put it once. I prefer the tape, and to put the tape, what I basically do, it's if I grip the bar and I'm going to be trying to spin it like this, I put the tape in the opposite direction. So it's going to be like this. You spin it 3 or 4 times and you break it like that, and you have the tape, which grips really, really strong and basically your hand is not going to slip anymore from the bar. You may think it may make it harder for the transition, but if your wrist is already that high, you don't really need to rotate that much to the transition, so it really doesn't make it harder, at least for me and my technique.